You are listening to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda. On this episode, I am delighted to welcome Grant McCracken from Bitter Melody Records. In collaboration with One Friday Music in Manitoba, Bitter Melody is releasing a limited vinyl run of DUD's unearthed 1996 album May Not Go, Unrealized Recordings from 1996, featuring Mike Coop from the Bonaducci's on guitar and vocals, John Samson Fellows from Propaganda and the Weaker Thans on bass and backing vocals, and James Ash from I Spy on drums. The album's backstory on this podcast has been chronicled on a May 1st episode with Paul Hodgert from One Friday Music, who handled the mixing, mastering, and digital release, and a May 4th episode with songwriter, guitarist, and vocalist Mike Coop. This episode with Grant overviews his long history of trying over and over again to collaborate with the members of Propaganda and the Weaker Thans on various projects. He tried for 16 years and is delighted to bring DUD May Not Go into the world on vinyl as a benefit release. Orders are available at bittermelodyrecords.bigcartel.com in the US and dudband1996.bandcamp.com in Canada. Act fast, though. Only 150 to 300 copies will ever see the light of day, which we get into in the episode. Please enjoy my conversation with Grant McCracken of Bitter Melody Records. Grant, welcome to Unscripted Moments, a podcast about propaganda.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I'm delighted to have you here, Grant. Can you just introduce yourself a little bit for the listeners so they know a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name's Grant, and I run a record label out of North Carolina called Bitter Melody Records. I started it in 2010. And it's, I think, let's see, I can't remember the exact, we've got over 100 releases now. I think we're on, I have to look at we are on 117, BMR 117. So in 10 years, that's average, not 10 years, 16 years. That's about 10 releases a year, average.
Nice. Yeah, very good. It's a new label to me. I didn't really know about you until very recently, whenever all the dialogue for this DUD album started coming through. But it's really cool to find somebody, doing something cool that I didn't know about all this time. Tell me a little bit about what the label does and what excites you about it.
Okay. Well, I pretty much have always just released what I like. And so it ends up being a pretty eclectic lineup. It has sort of gotten pigeonholed, I guess, in the last really decade or so is more of a hardcore label, because that's just what has naturally kind of fell into my lap and what my friends are doing and recording, and I'm putting out stuff from my friends. But it's really all over the place. I've got releases that fall under folk and Americana. I've got way earlier, I had some more pop or an alt rock kind of records. But definitely, I think overall it would probably be categorized as a hardcore label.
Nice. Well, since you are on a podcast mostly about propaganda, I have to ask you, tell me a little bit about your own fandom of the band that this podcast is named after.
Propaganda was probably one of the bands that I was first really obsessed with when I got into punk rock as a teenager. I think me and my friends, I don't know the exact time we discovered them. I think both records were out whenever we got into them. Both of the first two records. So How to Clean Everything and Let's Talk More Rock. But I think it was pretty soon after Let's Talk More Rock. I think, and I've heard other propaganda fans on here too say the same thing. I think probably Anti-Manifesto on like Fat Comp was probably the first song I heard. But me and my little high school friend group, we were obsessed with propaganda in 97, 98. And I think the first time we were able to see them was on the Humanitarian Intervention Tour. And I mean, we'd been listening to them like for 3 years, I guess, at that point, like, because that tour was 2001. And so whenever that popped up, it was our first opportunity to go see them. And so we were going to try to hit as many of the dates as we possibly could.
Mm,
So I think it was, because I looked this up before we got on. It was March 14th, 2001, March 13th, and March 12th. So
nice.
we, anything within 4 hours, we hit that year. So we were in Virginia Beach March 12th, and then we went to Winston-Salem, which was our close by show. And then the next day we went to Atlanta. So we caught them 3 nights in a row. The first time I saw Propaganda. And of course, that was post John leaving. I never got to see them with John.
Yeah,
But
man. I actually have a. Was it with Avail? Did you see the Avail J Church lineups?
yeah,
For nice. That's very good. I have a tour poster in my collection from that tour from 2001. It's a nice little artifact. Um,
yeah, I
okay.
think I've got a tour poster somewhere folded up. I think I have a set list too, because I know one of the nights I climbed over up on the stage and got George's set list.
Nice. Okay, so you found out about Propaganda. You knew about John's work because of, Less Talk and How to Clean. Um, Tell me about your John Sampson and your Weaker Thans journey.
Well, certainly, I found out about John through Propaganda, and I know maybe it's just a regional thing, but I've always said pronounced it Propaganda,
Oh
and
no, that
so
this has come on this podcast many times over the
okay,
years. Yeah,
all right,
don't even sweat it at all.
and so like I thought about, it, I was like, should I be saying Propaganda? Because I have said Propaganda with the long A for 30 years, so I don't know that I can stop myself anymore. But
Anybody that's listened to this podcast many times has heard this little anecdote from people
okay.
all over the world. It's really funny, but it's a long running sort of subplot of this podcast at this point is the pronunciation.
Yeah, so I can't remember when I got a hold of Fallow. Luckily, I grew up in a small town, but we had a really cool record store who, has stocked Propaganda and stocked all the stuff that I wanted. And so I know I got Fallow there. I remember when Left and Leaving came out. So I was already a fan then. And yeah, I mean, I loved him in Propaganda. I think the mix of him and Chris was such a strange combination that like it worked so well. I mean, obviously like it works separate too, but I just love those two together. But yeah, and so John Sampson, like, you know, he's well, I mean, if anybody asks me what my favorite artist is, or I think John Sampson is always at the top of that list. Like
Mm.
it came up on, actually, like me and my wife, like on our first date, we were talking about music, and she was like, well, what's your favorite artist, or your music, your favorite band? And I was like, of course it's probably the Weaker Thans and John Sampson. And and she knew who they were. She came to them through a different route. She came through them through the Heavyweight podcast.
Oh yeah,
um she's like, oh yeah, I love them. I found out about
Sun
them
in an
through
Empty Room.
Heavyweight.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so Weaker Thans even helped me and my wife, click on our first date. Um, yeah. Yeah, I can gush about the Weaker Thans and John Sampson. I think his writing has always touched me in a way that no other singer has. Um, there's I can get, I don't know. No one brings out emotions quite like he does to me. There's songs I can't even really listen to without tearing up, particularly like, the Virtute
Yeah.
series. Like as soon as, I mean, I saw the track title of the last one, they always got to me a little bit. But then when I saw the track title of the final song on that, I knew it was just going to be like over. When that record came out or for streaming, I was at work that morning, and so like I tried to listen to it, and I was like just a few chords into it. I was like, nope, nope, I'm not going to listen to this at work because I'm just going to be sitting here at my desk bawling. So, um, yeah, I love John and I love the Weaker Thans. I was able to see them two times in the early 2000s. Whenever they came through North Carolina, they always played Cat's Cradle in Chapel Hill.
Hmm.
So the two times I saw them were both at Cat's Cradle in Chapel Hill. The first time was with Miko and Mary Time, and I think that was 2003. And then I saw them the next year with Lucero, who that's actually how I discovered Lucero too. I love that band too. And I was up front, of course, just waiting for Weaker Thans, and but there was a guy beside of me, and he was just losing his entire mind for
Yeah.
Lucero, like just losing his mind. I was like, well, this band's obviously going to be really good if this guy's like lost it, and they were fantastic, and I think and so I've been like a lifelong fan of Lucero ever since that night too.
Nice. Well, little side note based on something you mentioned is I love Heavyweight. That podcast is amazing. I've heard every episode. And uh, something I've never said on this podcast before is how relentless I have been in trying to get Jonathan Goldstein, the host of that podcast, onto this podcast to talk about the Weaker Thans and, his fandom. And it took 3+ years, and I finally received a response from him. He's extremely difficult, and he will not be coming on the podcast. But I
Mm.
chased Jonathan Goldstein as a white whale guest for many years, um, and super nice guy. And he was very gracious in turning me down. But it was awesome to finally hear back. I People don't realize how relentless I am sometimes, I
Yeah.
think. But you got to be. But really fun little connection there. Okay, so
Well,
since
I
you
too
started, yeah, go ahead.
am a heavyweight fan too. Well, and my wife was the one who turned me on to it because, but yeah, I've listened to every single episode of it as
Yeah.
well. It's a shame he won't can't come on because I think I would really like to hear. I know because he's friends with John,
Yeah, yeah. And
so I would love to hear like some of the background there.
Christine and John release all of make a ton of these sound effects that soundtrack the podcast. So it's not just the Weaker Thans, but Christine and John do tons of the background sounds as well. Um, so
Yeah, I heard
they're
them talk
huge
about it
connection there.
on your podcast. I heard John and Christine talk about it.
Yeah, yeah, huge
I
connection
didn't
there.
realize, that they did so much. I knew I recognized, like, when I listened to it, I was like, that sounds like John's guitar playing, and that sounds like, but yeah, I didn't realize that each season they record like a whole bank of, snippets and sounds and things that for
Yeah,
the podcast.
yeah, their Vivat Virtute hold music on Bandcamp. That release is 18 tracks, mostly instrumental, and most of that has appeared on Heavyweight, I'm pretty sure. So if people want to hear their Heavyweight stuff without any commentary or woven into the production of a podcast, it's on Bandcamp as the release called Hold Music, and the cover art is a little girl holding a telephone. It looks like. Um, so yeah, okay. So Grant, you have been attempting to collaborate with John Sampson and Propagandy for many years. I would love to know an overview of what you have pitched to them in various ways over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah. Well, like you said, how you are very tenacious whenever you are trying to get someone for the podcast. I've been a lot like that with the label too. I kind of, you know, I run the label. I'm doing what I like. I'm putting out the music that I want. So, I do have a short list of like people I just would love to work with because I love them, and I think that their music should be out in the world. And so, of course, John Sampson, anything Propagandy is in that world. So from the very, very beginning, I have pitched anything. Of course, Propaganda, they've always been signed essentially to many labels, a lot bigger labels than me. So I know, like, I'm not putting out a Propaganda full length record. Like, that's not going to happen. I don't have the probably, the size needed to do that. But um, anything that has popped up that maybe that the bigger label isn't necessarily interested in putting out physically, because I know a lot of bigger labels don't want to waste time with a single here or something there.
Yeah.
I have pitched it for sure to. I think I started back in 2010. I shared some emails with you earlier. I don't have them pulled up in front of me, but I know like after I got my first release or two under my belt, I was emailing G7 and just being like, hey, this old stuff of John's, was there any way that we could put it out? The Little Pictures EP.
Mm,
I mean, I'd love all of Slips and Tangles, but I don't know that he'd ever do that.
yeah.
But I'd love everything. And, I've always got very polite denials. And as far as propaganda goes, I have pitched, well, they first put up the recovered EP digitally.
Yeah.
That was before it was coupled with the deluxe repress later on. And so as soon as that went up digitally, I was emailing, be like, hey, let's do something. Because I loved Gamble. And because it was the live version of it was on that Rarities CD comp. So hearing like the studio version of Gamble was really, really fun. So, I emailed about that, of course, and Chris wrote me back and I got a polite no on that one. And then some of the random singles here there, like well, I'm trying to think, the John Hinckley single.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about it like because it was just a one-off song. So I think I pitched something like a flexi, just a novelty but physical release of it. And I've definitely, all the modern John Sampson stuff. I have, I think at one time, because there was one time, well, before all the Vivat Virtute stuff, like John was really off the radar. So I know I mailed him a physical letter one time to Canada, just kind of like talking to him. And, if there's anything you ever want that we could collaborate on, I would love to do it. Um, but yeah, I've reached out to them, and I think it's Christine I talked to because I think she does most of the social media stuff. But I've asked about various things, like of course, like the Vivat Virtute album,
Yeah.
and I'm blanking on the other EP that came out after that. What's the
Oh
name
yeah,
of
there's
it?
the June 1st
June,
EP.
yeah, yeah, the June 1st. I love that EP.
Man, that'd be
So I
so
asked
awesome
about
as a
it.
7 inch.
Yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
And and then I've just got polite responses that John's not really interested in releasing it physically at the moment. So,
Yeah.
and I try not to push too hard. Once I'm told no, I back off. But anytime there's something fresh, I do shoot my shot with it, so to speak. And of course, in the other two singles, I did pitch like 7 inches for like Millennium for All and
Yeah,
Fantasy
baseball.
Baseball.
Oh my God, I would
I
love
mean,
that.
Fantasy Baseball is probably one of my favorite songs of all time at this point because
Yeah, yeah. How can
he
you argue with that?
captures, yeah, I mean, it captures like a hope and futility that you can't help but feel, and
Yeah.
distills it into something pure. And yeah, I would love to see it in a physical release because I think it deserves to be preserved.
Yeah, man, I agree. Okay, so um let's chat about this current project. So I've known about the DUD tapes since October of 2025 because I went to Winnipeg to do a book release live event to sell the interviews collection book that I did. And I, was putting together the show, and my friend Paul Hodgert and I were collaborating on it. Paul did so much amazing work on that, and he helped me find a venue and secure that, and also secure a place to stay. So he made the trip super easy for me. But I asked Paul if he would play some music, and then we were, we're kicking around some ideas, and then I invited Mike Coop from the Bonaducci's, and Kicker, and his solo work as well, to play and open up the show, just do a little acoustic set. And Mike was so cool about it. And he shows up, and me and Paul and Mike are sitting there chatting at public domain in Winnipeg. And Mike starts telling this story about these ADAT tapes that he's had for 30 years, where he was in a short lived band with post propagandy John K. Sampson and James from I Spy. And Paul was like freaking out. And Paul's like, if you ever want to do anything with those, let me know. So Mike leaves the venue, goes to his home, grabs the tapes, and he came back and he was only gone like 10 or 15 minutes. Gives Paul the tapes and he's like, oh, here you go. And like just kind of like laughing it off. And Paul and I were standing there like gobsmacked looking at each other where he's got these tapes because it's unheard 30-year-old John Sampson performances. And no shade at all to the amazing work of Mike Coop and James Ash, but like unheard John Sampson anything is, I mean, that's a treasure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I saw this all go down. But tell me your version of how this release came to your attention recently.
Well, I was obviously a lot later on board, but I think I saw John share it.
Mm,
Um, I think he shared your post that you made about it, so I saw it on John's or the Vivat Virtue story,
yeah.
and I was like, "What? What is this?" And so, yeah, that was how I found it, and it was already there basically, or it was coming very soon. So, I didn't have a lot of anticipation because I saw it so late, but yeah. So as soon as I saw it and heard it, I was firing off another email there.
So so you reach out, and I presume you got Paul on the other end of that email, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about breaking this down with Paul, your pitch, and how that conversation with Paul kind of took shape.
It went pretty fast and smooth, really, because Paul was interested in it, and Mike was interested in it, and so it was just a matter of just us quickly kind of figuring out what we wanted to do there. Um, and yeah, I mean, at that point, the art was already done because he had already had Mike Milkowski like do the updated cover art,
Hmm.
and we already had the audio. So it was really just a matter of, kind of figuring out what we want to do with this release. And my plant that I work with, he does like etchings for, I mean, it's essentially the same price as like music. So I was like, well, you could, there's a couple different ways you could do something that's a little shorter. You could cut it at 45, which would make it a little bit louder. Or you could put it all on the A side and do etching on the B side. So we opted for the etching. So the cover art, the skull, the stretched out skull,
Yeah.
is etched on the B side, and yeah, all the music will be on the A side. And then Mike did have to fill out the art a little bit more because he had to do the back cover. Um, but yeah,
Oh my gosh, amazing. Okay, so uh, I personally was so pumped when you guys opted to go for the etching because I have a Weaker Thans album with a buffalo etched on side D. Um,
yeah.
and so, adding another etching to my collection is very, very cool. Um, Tell me about your thoughts on the music and these songs that have been pretty unheard for the last 30 years and are finally getting a little bit of attention. Tell me about your listenership as just a fan of music in general, a fan of John's, and what it was like to go through and listen to these tunes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when I heard it, I loved it. I'm a fan of Mike's other bands, like the Bonaduces. I love them, um, and this is different, like for all of them. I think and I loved I Spy as well. Um, but this band, it was almost like all of them trying something a little bit different. And so I really like that. I like, you can hear a little bit of Jawbreaker, you hear a little bit of you hear John's sound kind of evolving in there too.
Hmm.
There are parts that definitely remind me of like Weaker Thans. Um, but I mean, it sounds different than Mike's other work. It sounds different than John's other work. Definitely sounds different than I Spy. But it was a really cool project. It's really, I mean, it's 7 great songs. Um, and so and of course, like anything archival like that really kind of uh tickles something inside of me too, because I love like finding especially stuff that has just been lost and buried. I had something similar with a band here called named Zagoda. Um, I was we found a couple ADATs, one of which was known. It was like a demo that they had released, and then in the process of digging out that ADAT, we found another ADAT, which was 4 songs demoed that no one had ever heard before. Like
Nice.
the band didn't even remember recording it. So like
Wow.
anything like that, like I love. So the idea of like this project, which fills that like important little gap between John leaving Propaganda and really get going with the weaker thans, like and for all of them, really, that little gap, and filling that in with like what they were doing in that time, especially one that like I mean, essentially nobody even knew about. I think is amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so just a little bit of info for the release that people may not have heard on the other episodes about this album, but it was released digitally on May 15th, 2026. All proceeds went to the Islamic Relief Fund's efforts in Palestine, which that cause was decided by the band. And the performances is Mike Coop on vocals and guitar, John Sampson on bass and backing vocals, and James Ash on drums. It was recorded in November of 1996 by John Sutton, who recorded tons of music back then in the Winnipeg scene. And the ADAT transfer was done by Lloyd Peterson at Paintbox Recording in Manitoba. And then Paul Hodgert at One Friday Music, the label that released it digitally, he did the mixing and mastering himself. And then artwork by Matt Milkowski in Chicago. And I was chatting with Matt about this. I was like, Matt, can you believe you did a cover artwork for a John Sampson project? And he's like, oh no, of course not. And then also Matt did the cover artwork for a a homemade 25 copies, handmade thing that I did for Chris Hanna's A Catastrophic Break with Consensus Reality release. So Matt has now done cover artworks for 2 Propagandy related projects. And it's just so funny to think about doing these types of projects, like having grown up listening to these bands for the last, 30 years. Um, but tell me a little bit about the benefit for the vinyl and what is interesting to you about being the label doing the physical release and managing like a benefit release and what makes this kind of unique as far as releases go.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this before, but yeah, benefits are can be tricky, because you obviously want as much money to go to the thing that it is benefiting as you possibly can. So pressing way more than you need, um, will that benefit if it's a touring band? Of course, you want more than you need immediately. That way, the band can get more when they're touring. But when you're dealing with something archival, like a band that is not playing any more shows, that gives you sort of a finite number that you need. You're not going to have to restock the band. And then if it's a benefit on top of that, you don't want all the benefit money tied up in records that are sitting. So we opted to do a pretty limited run for this. We're doing 150 immediately.
Yeah.
Um, but we're going to launch pre-orders with this podcast. So as you're listening to this today, we should have the link that you can go and pre-order this. We're hoping to have the vinyl in mid to late September. And because of the way that I've ordered it, I've got 300 jackets regardless. The
Mm.
way this is, the way the jackets are run, so I can easily up the vinyl some more copies. So if we need more than the 300, then I can just increase that number up to 300, and that'll be more money going to the benefit, of course. Um, So, and that gives us a little bit more freedom, to adjust and make sure we get as much, to their efforts in Palestine as we can.
Nice. Okay, so how can listeners help the most? Like pre-orders would essentially determine the amount of vinyl that gets pressed, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the more people that, hit that pre-order for the vinyl from you will determine the final outcome. Is it possible that there might be like 225 total copies or 260 or something like that? Could it wind up being a weird number?
For sure. I think, if it was getting that close, that we needed 260, I would probably go ahead and just do the 300 since we're going to have 300 jackets anyway. So it's possible there could be a few extra ones in the mix there. Like if people can't pre order for whatever reason, there may be a handful of extras later on that they could pick up. But um, yeah, but obviously pre-ordering would help us to determine like that number, um,
Okay,
and making sure that we're not getting too many or too few. So because it's always important to me. Like I don't ever want to, I want people, if people want something, I want them to be able to have it. I don't want to exploit supply and demand in that way and create something that people are going to have to pay a whole lot of money for just to have later on down the line. If you want something, I want you to be able to have it.
perfect. Okay, I mean, Grant, is there anything else you feel like sharing about this release, this process, what you're excited about, anything in general, just as kind of a parting message for listeners out there?
Um, yeah, it's this release has went pretty smoothly. It's nice when everything just kind of falls into place, and this is one where it just seemed like the stars aligned to kind of make this release happen, and it scratches that itch too that I've always had of like wanting to do something in that propaganda John K. Sampson weaker than world.
Hmm.
Um, I would love it if, it opens up some communication with John and he sees what I do with this. I would love to be able to do something more with him, but I'm very happy to be, releasing this and helping get that like little gap in that history of propaganda and weaker thans out into the world. Um, but yeah, everything just kind of went very, very smoothly into place. I think from the minute we started talking about this, um, we had pretty much everything done and sent off in a matter of weeks. I think about June 3rd. Well, no, let's see. When the first email I sent was May 18th. So May 18th
Sweet.
was whenever I first reached out and he hit me back. And then I think, we had in less than a month, we had everything done and sent off and at the plant and going. So
Fabulous.
it all just fell into place.
Well, Grant, I'm so happy for you, sticking with it for 16 years of trying to work with someone related to Propagandy's work over the years. I mean, you finally did it, man. So
Yeah.
it's huge. It's huge. I can't wait. So I presume that the pre-order will be at bittermelodyrecords.bigcartel.com, correct?
Yes, that's my store. And then for Canadian orders, we will
Hmm.
be running those through the DUD Bandcamp page, I believe.
Perfect.
Um,
I'm going to put links to all of that in the show notes so listeners out there can find the Bitter Melody Big Cartel, but also dudband1996.bandcamp.com. All that will be linked. Get the release. I mean, there will only be between 150 and 300 of these, and you know, two of my dearest friends, Matt Milkowski and Paul Hodgert, worked like crazy on this, and so Grant, you're a new friend as well. So I am just so happy for everybody involved in this project, and it is my pleasure to bring this to see this entire process, literally from the handing off of the ADAT tape in Winnipeg to seeing this come out on vinyl. It's been an amazing process for me personally. So Grant, thank you so much for taking this on, for doing this, and everybody go hit that pre-order, okay?
and thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Grant.
It's well within your reach. It's time you